and a very, very hearty welcome to our very first English episode of the MTI KnowHow Coffee. I'm really excited today to welcome my first English-speaking guest. John Atkinson is joining me today in the MTI KnowHow Coffee. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Verena. Thank you. Or John Paul or Paul. It's just on the name giving here. They called me John.
John Paul Atkinson. Yeah. How are you this morning?
I'm okay. I've been riding my bike from home to home office, so I was out in the sun and the heart's pumping. So
very sporty in the morning. I managed to grab a coffee. That's about all I manage in the morning. And but this morning was quite easy. You know, some mornings are just like, ooh, it's easy, it flows.
Yeah,
and that's what we're talking about today as well, aren't we? We're talking about flow. And John, when we say the word flow, or when we hear flow, are we talking about what I think we're talking about, like flow, like get into the groove or in the zone? Is that what we're talking about today?
That's one nice example of it. And I think if you think about athletes that get into a really good state where they call it getting into the zone, then they are in a flow state, absolutely. And I would say in music, if you're talking about grooving, musicians grooving together, that's also a lovely example of a flow state if it's working well. And yeah.
So it's actually, because I think I've experienced flow. You know, I'm a singer, and sometimes when you just I sing in a small group, we're like 5, and sometimes when we concentrate, especially on hard pieces, you know, that are quite hard to sing, and sometimes you just get into this kind of, and it just flows. It just, everything works, and you don't know really why, and you know, but you at the end you're really happy. So what is flow? If you could explain that to our viewers, is there like a definition of flow so that we can make it a little bit more graspable?
You can talk about flow in terms of how you experienced the situation, and some of the characteristics are like when you finished your activity, it either went very quickly or it went very slowly. You lose your sense of time. Good morning, Ruth in Tübingen.
Yeah.
So yeah, losing a sense of time, and also being completely concentrated and focused on what you're doing, so that you just forget everything else that's around you. Those are extreme senses of flow. The dangerous sense of flow is that you only want to do this thing. It's like, it could be addictive. Yeah. So there's a nice example of like the surgeons that when they're actually operating on people, saving people's lives with the high capability, is that when they're on holiday, they find it very hard not to operate on people. So if they hear there's a hospital nearby, their fingers start itching. Mm-hmm. So that's the other side of it, is things that just really absorb us, is the easy way to understand it to start off with. Yeah.
Okay. I've read that there's actually research about flow. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I'm still trying to learn his name. Csikszentmihalyi, you told me there's a great way to learn that one.
I found this great analogy. It's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah.
Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah. And he's actually done research about flow, correct?
Correct. And he's written a few books on this. And that's the interesting thing for me. I mean, I read his main book on flow like 20 years ago, and I found it boring. I thought this is just simple and boring. And then in the depths of COVID in my kitchen in early 2019, March, April, I started reading it again, and it suddenly hit me that everything he's writing is just like very true for me and also quite simple. It's like, I think the first time I read it, the principle seemed so simple. I thought, that's too simple. The second time around, I thought, oh, it is simple and it's very important. And this feeling of, this is something that in my hobbies, I actually experience, and I think a lot of people do. And I thought, this could be a very interesting thing to use in a coaching setting. And so I started having ideas, and that's why I'm sitting here with you today on this topic, because I'm thinking about using flow in a coaching setting to help people, maybe in situations where they're not feeling so much in flow and would like to have more of this sense of
see,
high performance.
I read that Csikszentmihalyi actually defined 8 characteristics of flow, and I found that very surprising because I always thought it was something very, you know, just not describable. And he actually defined 8 characteristics. Can you tell us what these 8 characteristics are?
You told me that I should prepare these, but I've forgotten them again. I will try. Yeah. Well, there are some of the most important characteristics for me. Sorry, I just tipped my webcam. Is the idea that you need, when you've got a very clear goal, that you know what you want to achieve, that this activity is actually a challenge for you, so it stretches you out of your comfort zone, but at the same time it shouldn't stretch you too far, although these high performance athletes actually do that. You need very immediate feedback, so that things where you actually keep getting feedback on how you're doing and that you know how you're doing, actually increase the flow experience, which means on the other side, if you're not actually getting feedback, I mean, you could put it into a company context or a human development context where you say, if you're not getting this feedback, then it's very hard to get into a flow. And then you've got these two aspects. One is getting into a flow state on your own, and the other is flowing in a team setting. And those are two very different things. If you're on your own, you can create an environment where nothing disturbs you, you get full focus, you're doing the thing you like, and you can create that setting so you can get into your own flow. In a team, there's suddenly a lot of different variables.
So using these 8 principles, these like defined characteristics, does that mean anybody can get into flow?
I think everybody does get into flow. And I think that's the thing I'd like to do with the coaching concept I'm working out, is to demystify flow and say these are very simple principles, and all of us do experience them to some extent in certain things that we do. And I think these metaphors of high performance athletes and Einstein in his genius reveries, they actually make it harder for us normal people to think that maybe we're doing it ourselves too. And what I'd like to focus on is to see, okay, when we're in flow, because I think all of us are at some points, how do we get in there? And how could we use that knowledge of how we do it to help us release resources for situations where we may be having more difficulties?
Well, how does one get into flow?
How does one get into flow?
How do I get into flow? Like on purpose? Because I thought it just kind of happens, you know, but you're saying that we can get there on purpose. So how do I do that?
I think the idea is that you can reframe situations. So you can think about how you approach situations and what your goal is in a situation. It may be that, like, for this session together, you're doing the coffee, and we've prepared the coffee talk, and we've prepared it. We have particular ideas of how it's going to be. So you have set goals, and it could be that you get up this morning and think, with this crazy John Paul guy, I'm not sure how it's going to be today. I'm not really that excited about the session, and whatever. And it could be that you give yourself a different goal because you have that feeling. You say, okay, for this session, I'm just going to try and test my ability to structure a creative, crazy person and see if I can do that really in 3 clear ways. And you have a completely different goal to the session to me, but you've given yourself, because you've identified a trigger that might make it difficult, you give yourself a different pre-frame. My idea is that if we use these principles that Csikszentmihalyi then defined, we can kind of have a scale of check yourself in your power situations and give yourself a scale on 0 to 10 for each point, and then see which ones you might be able to transfer into a different situation.
Okay. But we've talked, of course, we've talked before, and one thing you mentioned that, you know, you're so interested in this flow idea because you think it could be very beneficial for teamwork, actually, agile teams. And I was actually a bit surprised by that, because agile teams, they're rarely, you say that a characteristic of flow is that complete concentration on the task, but aren't teams, and especially agile teams, that in themselves, they never have the luxury to focus on this one task. They get distracted all the time. So how does that work together in your mind?
Well, I think there are two things within agile teams. One is that you have these cycles where you're refining your tasks with each other to see how everybody's doing and to see if you're getting on okay, and if you can pass on tasks to others, and that you have your dailies and your retrospectives just to see, really find out how people are getting on with their tasks. So you actually learn more about the goal setting and also about how well people are adjusted to what they're doing.
True.
Yeah, so that's the one aspect.
Yeah.
And the other aspect is, if a team really is identified with a goal that they're trying to achieve, then you've got that main prerequisite to get into a flow together, if you've got this high identification. But I think you're right, that's the main challenge. And I think that's one of the reasons that agile principles have come into play. Yeah. Is that they do help.
But on the other hand,
get a team into high performance.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I mean, agile teams are usually they're created on the spot, or to work on a challenging task, and so they usually do have like one defined purpose, which is one of the characteristics or prerequisites of getting into flow, like a clear purpose. And you mentioned feedback also. You mentioned the dailies. That feeds into these characteristics, doesn't it? Because they have that immediate feedback through the dailies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, as I mentioned, one of the main principles. So if you think of the rock climber, why does the rock climber get into flow? It's a huge challenge situation, but he's also getting immediate feedback through his fingers from the environment the whole time as to how he's doing. And this feedback as to how the team's doing, how people are doing, is very strong and important in agile. And I think that's why you get this these stories of, I think, computer programmers that were the cause of agile frameworks, is that when they work out their tasks and get into their programming, it's like everybody's getting into this flow because everybody knows what they're doing, and it's the deep thinking flow that software teams get into.
Yeah.
And I guess that this is one of the reasons that agile principles became trendy, because there is something of that flow in there. It's just an idea.
I still find it very. I always thought flow is like a personal experience, like something that I experience for myself. So I'm not entirely sure how a team gets into flow, or how could, getting into flow, how do you get a team into flow, and why does that even work? Isn't it a personal experience?
I think it's both. It's both at the same time. I mean, if you just think of a football team, yeah, it's 11 individuals playing the way they play. And if they play very well, and they have a very good strategy, and they've trained very well, and they all want to win very strongly, they get into a flow, and they experience it together, and they experience their own flow. It's like the striker that's scored his 4 goals in the European Championship and scores again in the final. He keeps getting into his flow. He finds that little space, but he wouldn't find it without the team.
Okay, yeah.
So I think it's things happening in parallel. Everybody can have their personal flow. The team could be in quite a good flow, and somebody in the team maybe not,
Yeah, so the team could function as a prerequisite for flow. The better the team works together, or the more attuned the team is, the more likely the flow state is achieved.
I think so. That sounds like common sense.
And that's what just so that, I and our viewers understand, that's what you're working on. You're trying to create a coaching that helps teams to create this, or to get into this flow state.
At the moment, I'm more concentrating on one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I do team trainings, and I'm involved with some of the agile principles too. But it's for me, it's like a patchwork. And the coaching thing, I like the idea because it has this principle of releasing resources and turning round from a strength resource to a weakness situation. It's very simple, and I think it kind of demystifies flow in a nice way, that we can just apply it to little things and big things at the same time.
I like that. I like that you say demystify, because this whole flow concept, it tends to be, so, you know, people blow it up into this really mysterious kind of thing, like get into flow, and they always talk about it, and that's, you know, that's the success factor, but they never tell you how. And that's what I like, that you're thinking about, what can I do to help people get into flow? So you're working on the how, actually give them tools how to get to that state, and like take the mystery out of it.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful for this preparation that we've done, and that we're talking about this now. You know, when you talk things through, you get ideas. And just what you say, I'm thinking about this coaching one-on-one, and at the same time, I'm thinking, if you're dealing with agile teams and coaching agile teams, then it pays into that situation too. It's like, if you're in an agile context and you realize that there's something happening in there that's quite exciting, and you can give it a name, it might give you another motivation to feel even better about what you're doing. Say, oh, we're actually getting into a great flow here because A, B, C, D, and this framework works because of this. Yeah,
and I mean,
and if you combine that with one-on-one coaching, so that people find it for themselves, then you get like a double dynamic, which could be quite powerful, I think.
I believe so. I mean, it would, in the end, the more in flow the team is, and the more in flow, you know, the individual is, the higher the output. So that would increase, in the end, productivity. The work would be more successful, which I think every organization would be happy to have.
Yeah, everybody's trying to make high performance teams, right?
Yeah.
And I think, oh no, another high performance team, can't we just have like teams working well? But no, high performance teams. But yeah, if you look at the principles, then a lot of them are principles that are applied anyway. It's like a lot of it is nothing new, but the idea of releasing these resources from a strength perspective, I think, could be new.
Yeah, so, I think it could be very exciting. And we've reached the end of our KnowHow Coffee. I think it's a very interesting topic, and when you've worked out your coaching program, then I'd be happy to welcome you back, because I'd be interested to see how that looks like.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. And if people are interested and would like to get in touch and just talk about it and share in my journey, I'd be happy for that too. At the moment, I'm not selling anything. I'm just working it out. So it's a good time to jump in.
Yeah, great. If you're interested, and if you want to get in contact with John Atkinson, then you will find all the information under our YouTube video as usual. We'll also insert some links in there where you can get to know more about the flow principle from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And I think if you want to get your teams more successful, this flow state, this flow idea, I think you're onto something there, John. And now it's just left for me to say, have a great week, have a great Thursday, and we'll see each other again next week, again with an English KnowHow Coffee. I can't talk today. We're welcoming Mike Phipps next week, and he will present his new personality profile with a very own live analysis of my personal profile. So I'm excited. Tune in. Bye.
Thanks, Verena. Bye.